afternoon. It's Wednesday afternoon, and we welcome you to Faith Lutheran Church. We're here in our gathering room, and we're trying something new. Today would be the day that we would be generally meeting for a meal and for a message, and we're unable to be together, so we are trying to use technology to be able to be together, to reach and to share the message that our dear Pastor Ketchie has for us. So we welcome you wherever you are, and we hope that this message will be a blessing to you, and at some point in the future we hope you'll be able to join us here so that we can be face to face. We also are working to have a Sunday morning live Facebook service at 10:30, and we're working on that and working through some glitches. So hopefully we can do that. And if we're not live at 10:30 on this Sunday, March 29th, we'll be recording something and we will be posting it on our church Facebook page and on our church website. I do want to announce that we have been informed by Meals on Wheels, and Meals on Wheels is one of the organizations we support through our donations and through our volunteers. They are moving to a Monday-only delivery, and they're going to be taking out frozen trays and cool trays to their clients. However, they need volunteers. So if you are available to help volunteer on a Monday, starting this Monday, which is March the 30th, if you would call the Meals on Wheels office at 704-633-0352. So now I'm going to welcome Pastor Ketchie, who's going to share his message with us today entitled Half Price Crosses. Thank you.
We're glad to be back together after we started our Lenten services earlier, and then the coronavirus situation occurred and everything's been sort of put on hold. But today we're going to continue our Lenten series on the meaning of the cross with the title Half Price Crosses. And I'm taking this from Luke's Gospel, the 14th chapter, verses 25 through 35. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? If you lay down the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, 'This person began to build and wasn't able to finish.' Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off, and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. Salt is good, but it loses its saltiness. How can it be made salty again? It is fit either for the soil nor for the manure pile. It is thrown out. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear the gospel of the Lord." In the jewelry store window, there was a sign posted which read, "Crosses for sale, half price." And that sign just set my mind to reeling with its implications. In our culture, it means very little to wear a cross. For many, it is a meaningless piece of jewelry. When the singer Madonna wears a cross, her audience does not presume that she is making a faith statement. Perhaps a fashion statement, but not a faith statement. I am convinced that were it not for all the jewelry, that a lot of the Major League Baseball players could steal more bases. And all that stuff just slows them down. When that 300 hitter steps to the plate with a cross that's dangling from his ear, neither the sportscasters nor the fans presume that he is making a faith statement. People wear lots of jewelry these days, including crosses around their neck, on their fingers, in their ears, attached to their navels and their noses. For thousands of people, the cross is just one more popular piece of jewelry without any clear symbolism to it. Now, during this week, whenever you meet a person wearing a cross, step up to him or her with a smile and just simply say to them, "Thanks for wearing the cross. I'm a Christian too." And if that person gives you a really puzzled look and mumbles something about it being just a piece of jewelry, then you stop and ask them, "Would you like to talk about what it means to be a Christian?" You might discover a marvelous opportunity for a witness. Contrast our situation with some cultures where even today the cross can cost you your life. Christians today are the most persecuted religious group in the world, and the persecution is intensifying. Crosses are not cheap everywhere. Jesus said that if anyone wants to be my follower, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. In that context, the cross refers to some suffering or sacrifice that you undertake voluntarily out of love for Christ and concern for other people. Carrying a cross will not earn you a ticket to heaven. Those tickets are free gifts from God, paid for by Christ on a cross. But if you have received that free gift of salvation, gratitude will create an inner compulsion to carry crosses for Christ's sake. Now, a disturbing question. Where in your life or mine is there any cross bearing? Where is there any suffering or sacrifice for Christ or other people? These are some heavy thoughts for March. Let me take you to the biblical passage that triggered them. In Luke chapter 14, beginning with verse 25, let me set the scene for you. Jesus is in the latter state of his 3-year ministry on earth. In fact, he is on the way to Jerusalem where he will be executed. And among the general public, Jesus is at the apex of his popularity. Great crowds are following him because they have seen his miracles and they have heard his teaching. And also, they like the way that he puts those self-righteous people down, those big shots. But Jesus can tell that most of these folks don't understand him at all. Their loyalty is about as thick as a palm leaf. They think that he is headed to a coronation instead of a crucifixion. They think that they are following a conquering hero. They have no idea that Jesus will be a suffering scapegoat for the world's sins. And so perhaps as they take a break to have lunch, Jesus says to the crowd, in effect, "Everybody sit down over here on this grassy slope. I need to have a heart-to-heart talk with you." And Jesus says, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple." Now, Now, I can imagine that the people's eyes flew open, and they just whispered to each other, did he say what I think he said? You need to understand at this point that it was the custom of the teachers in the first century to overstate in order to make a point to people. For example, Jesus said, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Also, please note that in the Aramaic language, which Jesus himself spoke, the word for hate means literally to love a great deal less than. And so Jesus was really saying, unless you love me a great deal more than anything or anyone, you cannot be my disciple. In fact, that's the way the gospel writer Matthew renders this troubled statement. And then Jesus added, don't start anything unless you have first considered the cost and are prepared to meet them. And then Jesus uses two examples. No one builds a watchtower in a vineyard without first checking to make sure that he can afford to buy all the materials. Otherwise, he will build half a tower, then run out of materials, and become the laughing stock of the whole community. Similarly, no king takes an army out to fight a rival army without first considering whether his army is strong enough to win. And if he is not strong enough, he sends his Secretary of State to ask for peace terms. Jesus turns to the crowd and the followers and he said, in effect, before you continue following me, you better consider whether you are willing to pay the price. If you're just here on a lark, go home. If you stick with me, it will cost you. Gary Player, as you know, an aging golfer, in his prime, he won more international golf tournaments than anyone else. Often through the years, fans would approach him and they'd say, boy, I would give anything to be able to hit that ball like you do. And usually Player would respond in some very polite and humble way. But one day he was tired and frustrated, and he heard that statement once too many. And he responded, you would give anything to hit a golf ball the way I do if it was easy. Do you know what you've got to do to hit a golf ball like I do? You've got to get up every morning at 5 o'clock, go out to the course and hit 1,000 golf balls. And when your hands start bleeding, you walk to the clubhouse, you slap on some bandages on your hands, and then you go back out and you hit another 1,000 golf balls. That's what it takes. You would give anything to hit a ball like I do if it were easy. But because it's not, you never will. Now you have a nice day. Gary Player, in his own way, was echoing Jesus' theme of long ago, that before you establish a goal or undertake a task, count the cost. Instead of just advertising an excellent church school classes here, or inspirational worship services, or marvelous youth program, and all the rest, perhaps we should say this, that if you choose Christ as your Lord and Faith Lutheran as your church family, it will cost you big time. You will give far more money to the cause than you think you can afford. You will carve out precious blocks of time in which to serve other people for no pay. You will make other people's troubles your own. and you will take unpopular positions on controversial issues. You might lose some friends, especially those who like to tell racist jokes. They won't find you a congenial companion anymore. And your friends who like to spend, the evenings at the bars, they won't find you willing to make those trips with them anymore. And catch this. You will follow this new lifestyle, not because you have to, but because you want to. And by the way, in the process, you're going to have the time of your life. We also read that whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Crosses involve suffering and sacrifice, and no one likes to suffer or sacrifice. In 1916, Georgia Tech played a football game against a team from a tiny law school of Cumberland University. Of course, Tech was a powerhouse, and it rolled over Cumberland by a score of 222-0. And in the process, the Cumberland players, they got all roughed up very badly. And towards the end of the game, the Cumberland quarterback, Ed Edwards, he fumbled a snap from the center. And as the Tech players come charging in, Edwards yelled to his running backs, "Pick it up, pick it up!" And the fullbacks yelled back at him, "You pick it up, you drop it." Suffering and sacrifice, even for a good cause, are seldom very attractive. But what is your cross? There are crosses all over, just waiting for shoulders to lift them. In a great church, every member should be able to name his or her cross. Tony Campolo tells about a young woman named Nancy, whom he met in Philadelphia. She is crippled and confined to a wheelchair. And when Tony asked her how she became crippled, she said, "I tried to commit suicide." She said, "I was living alone, I had no friends, I hated my job, and I was constantly depressed. So I decided to jump from the window of my apartment. But instead of being killed, I ended up in the hospital paralyzed from the waist down. And the second night I was in the hospital, Jesus appeared to me and he told me that up until then, I had had a healthy body and a crippled soul. But from then on, I would have a crippled body and I would have a healthy soul. And I gave my life to Christ right then and there. And when I got out of the hospital, I tried to think of how a woman like me could do some good. And I came up with an idea. I put an ad in the newspaper and I said this, that if you are lonely or have a problem, call me. I am in a wheelchair and I seldom get out. And we can share our problems. Just call. I love to talk. The results have been astounding. Every week, at least 30 calls come in. She often spends her days comforting and counseling people. Nancy is a cross bearer. If she can do it, then anybody really can. Perhaps Halford Lubbock asked his two granddaughters what they wanted for Christmas one Christmas. They responded, "Give us a world." Puzzled by such a request, he consulted their mother. She explained that they wanted a globe. And so that's what Grandpa bought them. But on Christmas morning, when presents were all opened, he could sense that the girls were a bit disappointed. And one of them said, "We were hoping it would be a lighted world." "Oh," said Granddad, "I can fix that." And so he took the globes back to the store to trade them in for ones with lights inside of them. And when he presented these lighted globes to the girls, boy, were they thrilled to death. Later, Dr. Luckock told a friend about this experience, and then he commented, I learned something from this experience. I learned that a lighted world costs a lot more. If we want to light up this world for Jesus Christ, it will cost us more in sacrifice for sure, and perhaps in suffering. But look what it cost our Savior.